From the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt, this is ATN International News. First, the headlines. Trump officials revoke Biden's extension of protection. Hospitals face surge of Haitian mothers fleeing conflict. Caroline becomes youngest White House press secretary. U.S. deportation flight lands after Trump patrol rule. Trump offers millions of federal workers payout to resign. Serbia's president hints at snap process after prime minister quits. Rebels appear to be edging closer to taking control of the key city of Goma in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo following reports that they had captured its airport. The Congolese government has insisted that it is still in charge as fighting in parts of the city continues. Warehouses with food and medical supplies have been looted, aid agencies says. The clash between M23 rebels and the army and its allies have left hospitals overwhelmed by casualties and bodies lying on the streets, according to the United Nations. Growing anger over the rebel offensive led to protesters targeting foreign embassies in the capital, Kinshasa. Calls for peace talks to end the fighting are mounting. Neighboring Rwanda has been accused of backing the Tutsi-led M23 as it made a rapid advance in recent months across the mineral-rich region. Rwanda has consistently denied this. The lakeside city of Goma, on the border with Rwanda, is a vital transport and trading hub close to large sources of minerals that are essential in the manufacture of mobile phones. Following a meeting on Tuesday, the African Union, AU, called on the M23 to lay down its arms. The AU's Peace and Security Commissioner, Bankole Adeoye, condemned the violence by M23 and all other negative forces and calls for full respect of DR Congo's sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity, a statement from the AU on X said. As diplomats were discussing the situation, the rebels seem to be gaining ground in Goma. They have taken control of the airport. M23 fighters are there, a security source told the AFP news agency. More than 1,200 Congolese soldiers have surrendered and are confined to the UN base at the airport. Earlier on Tuesday, Adelheld Mashang, the World Health Organization's emergency response coordinator for the Democratic Republic of Congo, spoke of hundreds of people in hospital, most admitted with gunshot wounds. Trump administration's freeze on U.S. foreign aid globally has included a stop work order to a program run by Aid Group Action against hunger, helping severely malnourished children in refugee camps in Ethiopia. So pause on foreign aid spending meant a complete halt. The only exceptions for emergencies funded by its grants, including the group's therapeutic feeding centers for malnourished children under the age of 5 and their mothers in camps in the Gambela region, the sources familiar with the matter said. Newsmen spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak to the media. Biden administration had extended protections for more than 600,000 Venezuelans in the coming months. The Trump administration has revoked an extension of deportation protections that President Joseph R. Biden Jr. had granted to more than 600,000 Venezuelans already in the United States, according to a copy of the decision obtained. On Tuesday, Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, decided to revoke the 18-month extension of what is known as temporary protected status, which is intended to help people in the United States who cannot return safely and immediately to their country because of a natural disaster or an armed conflict. The move is a blow to hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan migrants who believe they would not only be protected from deportation, but also provided extension could add to Mr. Trump's crackdown on not only illegal immigration, but also on immigrants whom the Biden administration had authorized to remain in the country. In the past, Mr. Trump has targeted immigrants on the temporary protected status, which aids migrants from some of the most unstable countries in the world. Republicans have argued, however, that the measures has strayed far from its original mission of providing temporary shelter from conflict or disaster. During his first administration, Mr. Trump aimed to stop the protections for migrants from several countries, including Haiti. Haitian mothers are seeking care at hospitals in neighboring Dominican nations and an immense wealth gap. Children born to Haitian parents in the Dominican Republic do not receive citizenship. I had my child here. Seniors Leon told newsmen from a hospital in the eastern of hospitals were operating around Haitian largest public hospital for a government press conference meant to announce a long-awaited reopening. Those plans have been put on hold. The to warn of a lack of supplies such as blood and oxygen. Aid group Doctors Without Borders temporarily halted service. Requirements for the facility include a temporary operations center, staging area, and a temporary holding location for the receiving, holding, and processing of illegal aliens. Northern Command said this in a statement. This facility will be manned by ICE senior leaders, special agents, and analysts, as well as members of the Department of Homeland Security, components, and other federal law enforcement agencies. Northern Command did not say how many migrants might be detained at Berkeley or whether additional U.S. military bases might soon be opening for detention of migrants. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Immigration arrests have reached about 1,000 to 1,200 per day in recent days, according to ICE, far above the daily average of 311 in fiscal year 2024. Critics say Trump's immigration crackdown could separate families, hurt U.S. business, and violate due process rights of migrants. President Donald Trump signed an executive order Tuesday seeking to restrict gender-affirming care for people under the age of 19. The order would move to restrict medical institutions that receive federal funding from providing such care, including puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and surgeries, calling on the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services to take all appropriate actions to end the chemical and surgical mutilation of children. The executive order does not appear to restrict these procedures for non-transgender people under 19. It's the latest action from Trump that impacts the transgender community, which is estimated to make up less than 1% of the population over the age of 13. Trump also recently signed executive orders restricting transgender participation in the military, ending federal legal recognition of transgender people, and restricting gender marker changes on federal documents. Major national medical associations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and more than 20 others, argue that gender-affirming care is safe, effective, beneficial, and medically necessary. Trump's executive order states that it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund Sponsor, promote, assist, or support so-called transition of a child from one sex to another. Service health benefits. Trump's order expressed concerns that gender-affirming care sterilizes children, saying countless children soon regret that they have been mutilated and begin to grasp the horrifying tragedy that they will never be able to conceive children of their own or nurture their children through breastfeeding. I beg your pardon. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we will continue with the rest of the stories. Please stay with us. Trump administration on Tuesday offered roughly 2 million federal workers the option to resign but be paid through the end of September in an effort to drastically reduce the size of the federal workforce and push out people who do not support President Trump's political agenda. In an email, the Office of Personnel Management, an agency that oversees the federal civilian workforce, gave employees the option to leave their positions by typing the word resign into the subject line of an email and hitting send. Workers have until February 6 to accept the offer. The email with the subject line, fork in the road, said that the majority of federal agencies would probably be downsized and that a substantial number of employees would be furloughed or reclassified to at-will status, essentially making them easier to fire. Most people who have been working remotely will be required to work from their office 5 days a week, the email said, and some physical offices will be consolidated, causing some people to be relocated. The message also said that enhanced standards of conduct would be applied to ensure that workers were reliable, loyal, trustworthy, and warned that at this time, we cannot give you full assurance regarding the certainty of your position or agency. Employees who accept the offer will promptly have their duties reassigned or eliminated. According to a guidance memo published by the OPM on Tuesday, workers will then be placed on paid administrative leave until the end of September. Transgender rights advocacy groups filed a lawsuit on Tuesday against U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order that targeted transgender service members in what would be the first legal challenge to a cornerstone of his conservative agenda at the Pentagon. Trump signed an executive order on Monday that took aim at Washington, D.C., challenges the constitutionality of the executive order and said it violated the equal protection component of the Fifth Amendment. The plaintiffs include 6 transgender service members and 2 individuals looking to join the military. The executive order signed by Trump said that expressing a gender identity different from an individual's sex at birth did not meet military standards. While some Democratic lawmakers, President Trump's executive order is an insult to the bravery and service of transgender service members, Senator Andy Kim said. At just 27, Caroline Leavitt has become the youngest White House press secretary in U.S. history. Donald Trump's former White House intern, 27-year-old Caroline Leavitt, has become the youngest White House press secretary in U.S. history. Leavitt, who made her debut in the briefing room this week, echoed her boss' inaugural speech, declaring that the golden age of America has most definitely begun. The 27-year-old Gen Z conservative has promised that she would be available to all media outlets as well as new media voices. Who long Trump loyalist is a avid gum lover and shared a video on Instagram showing her unloading a machine gun at a firing range with the caption, "Joe Biden, come and take it." I have the utmost confidence she will excel at the podium and help deliver our message to the American people as we make America great again, Trump had said. The anti-government demonstration sprang up in the wake of the roof collapsing at a railway station in the city of Novi Sad, killing 15 people and leading to calls for Vucevic to quit. What began as small gatherings in Novi Sad have ballooned and spread to the capital, Belgrade, as students, teachers and other workers have turned out in their thousands to blame the station disaster on corruption within the government of President Alexander Vucic. The Minister for Construction, Transportation and Infrastructure and the Trade Minister have already stepped down because of the incident, but that failed due to quell the protest. I opted for this step in order to diffuse tensions, Vucevic told a news conference on Tuesday, announcing his resignation. He said the mayor of Novi Sad would also resign. The protest, which included students putting up a blockade at a main junction in Belgrade this week, have been largely peaceful. Vucevic said an investigation is underway. He blamed foreign interference for stoking the protest without providing evidence. Opposition parties and rights watchdogs accuse him and the SNS of bribing voters, stifling media freedom, violence against opponents, corruption and ties with organized crime. Vucevic and his allies deny these allegations. The opposition, Creni Promeni party, has called for an interim government made up of experts sanctioned by students who have led the protest. It has urged the other opposition parties not to boycott elections if they are held. In an interview, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine required broader security guarantees to defend itself against further Russian aggression. Zelensky also appealed directly to U.S. President Donald Trump, urging him to stand firmly with Ukraine in its ongoing conflict with Russia. He stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin was not afraid of Europe and was determined to continue his actions. Zelensky comments come amid ongoing tensions between neighbors, Russia and Ukraine, with the Ukrainian leader calling for more substantial military and political assistance to deter further Russian expansion. Trump, who took office on January 20th, has promised to end the Russia-Ukrainian war soon, without saying how. Aides have suggested that a deal could take months. Trump has expressed willingness to speak to Putin about ending the war, a contrast with the administration of Democratic former President Joe Biden, who shunned the Russian leader. Trump's election win in November had sparked hope of a diplomatic resolution to end Moscow's invasion of Ukraine that began in February 2022. But it also led to fears in Kyiv that a quick peace deal could come at a high price for Ukraine. Milos Vucevic has destabilized the government controlled by Vucic, prompting the opposition to call for the formation of a temporary government. In particular, the opposition party, Kreni Promeni, called for the creation of a temporary government made up of experts approved by students. However, in his current address to the nation, President Vucic emphasized that the idea of a temporary government is out of the question. While Vucic's party secured a solid victory in the early parliamentary elections in 2023, it has been facing increasing pressure recently. Opposition parties and human rights activists accuse Vucic and his Serbian Progressive Party, SNS, of voter bribery, suppressing media freedom, violence. It is likely to defame all migrants living in Germany, to stir up prejudices and, in our opinion, does not contribute to solving the real issues. The representatives of both churches wrote in a joint letter to Parliament seen by reporters. Friedrich Merz, the leader of Germany, seized by German security services, but is currently polling second in nationwide surveys before the upcoming snap election in the country, where the debate on immigration intensified after a string of violent attacks by foreign-born suspects. The two major churches hereby point out that, according to current knowledge, the proposed changes to the law would not have prevented any of the attacks, wrote Perlanti and Gideon, the representative of the German Protestant Churches Council, and Prelate Karl Juwestein, the head of the Commissariat of German Bishops. The churches stressed that the CDU-CSU is risking breaking a taboo on cooperation with the far right for the first time in German post-war history. We fear that German democracy will suffer massive damage if this political promise is abandoned, they wrote. The CDU, or the Christian Democratic Union, and its Bavarian sister party, Christian Social Union CSU, often commonly related as the union's denominations, represented in early equal proportions. More than 7 people and possibly as many as 15 have been killed and many more injured in a crowd crush at the world's largest religious festival in northern India, according to reports. Witnesses counted several bodies, and a doctor at the festival site in the city of Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh told the reporters that 15 people were killed in the crush near a river bank early on Wednesday morning. Footage of rescue teams carrying victims away from the religious site showed clothes, shoes, and other discarded belongings strewn all over the ground as police officers carried stretchers bearing the bodies of victims wrapped with blankets to waiting ambulances. The final death toll is yet to be confirmed, and relatives of injured victims were anxiously waiting for news outside the large tent, serving as a purpose-built hospital for the festival, approximately a kilometer from the accident site. A Rapid Action Force (RAF), a special unit called in during crisis, had been deployed to the area to bring the situation under control, and rescue efforts were on the way, officials said. Palestinians returning to their homes in Gaza City this week found a city in ruins after 15 months of fighting, with many seeking shelter amongst the rubble and searching for relatives lost in the chaotic return march. Gaza City, in the north of the enclave, is a shell of the bustling urban center it was before the war, with swaths of buildings destroyed by Israeli bombardments and piles of rubble and torn-up concrete on every side. "Look at this scene, there is nothing to say," said a man who gave his name as Abu Muhammad as he searched for a place to settle. "People will not sleep on the ground. There is nothing left." Many of those returning, often laden with what personal possessions they still have after months of being moved around as the battleground shifted, had trekked 20 kilometers, which is 12 miles, or more along the coastal highway north. By late on Monday, Gaza's Hamas authorities said more than 300,000 people, or almost half of those displaced from the north during the war, had crossed into Gaza City and the north edge of the enclave from areas in the south. Even as those who arrived in Gaza looked around for somewhere to settle down, tens of thousands were still moving north as mediators began preliminary work on the second stage of ceasefire negotiations due to begin next week. In Cairo, a high-level Hamas team led by Mohammed Darwish, head of the group's leading council, held talks with Egyptian mediators and welcomed 70 Palestinian prisoners who arrived in Cairo prior to being moved to third countries who would be willing to host them. Who would be willing to host them, a Hamas statement said. Healthcare centers serving tens of thousands of reports by Friday, January 31, according to a local official and two camp committee members. The IRC did not respond to a request for comment. Trump last week paused development assistance from the U.S. Agency for International Development for 90 days to assess compatibility with his America First policy. The freeze has thrown the global aid sector, which is heavily funded by the U.S., into chaos. It was not immediately clear what impact a waiver for life-saving humanitarian assistance during a 90-day pause issued by the State Department on Tuesday would have, or how many centers across the 9 camps housing some 10,000 people were impacted. The health facilities on the border serves tens of thousands of refugees from conflict-torn Myanmar. About 50 patients had been discharged, while several severely ill patients remained in the Mae La Hospital, including a child recovering from heart surgery, said the school teacher, declining to be named because they were not authorized to speak publicly on these assistance for their day-to-day health services. Withdrawal at midnight on Tuesday, train operations resumed across the country, including the Dhaka from early Wednesday morning. According to Kamalapur station manager Anwar Hussain, 7 trains had already departed from around 7:30 p.m. An Israeli drone carried out a strike with a guided missile targeting a small vegetable truck in Nabatieh al-Faqwa. The state-run national news agency reported the town lies north of the Litan River, but only around 10 kilometers, which is 7 miles from the Israeli border. NNA later reported a second strike less than 2 kilometers, a little over a mile away from the first strike on the Zautawa-Nabatieh road. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati condemned the strikes, calling them another violation of Lebanese sovereignty and a blatant breach of the ceasefire arrangement, according to a statement from his office. He added that he contacted the head of the Ceasefire Monitoring Committee, U.S. Major General Jasper Jeffers, and urged him to take a firm stance to ensure Israel complies with its obligations under international law. Israeli military spokesman Avichai Adri confirmed the strikes, saying they targeted Hezbollah vehicles transferring weapons in South Lebanon. Israeli aircraft struck a Hezbollah truck and an additional vehicle that transferred weapons in the areas of Chakif and Nebatia in southern Lebanon, he said on X. The military is determined to continue to operate in accordance with the understanding between Israel and Lebanon, despite Hezbollah's attempts to return to South Lebanon, and will operate against any threat posed to the state of Israel, he added. That's the international news for today. I am Francis Neka. Thank you for watching. You can follow us on our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, at Atlantic TV Net, Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram at Atlantic TV Network. Watch us live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. Remember, peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Coming up next is business news. Please stay with us.